It's difficult to tell when video gaming becomes an addiction. The signs can be easy to miss. In this episode, Dr. Judith Joseph gives you a step-by-step strategy on how to spot the warning signs of video game addiction in your child at home and at school. Dr. Joseph, I think this is going to be one of the most helpful, if not the most helpful episode in this series, because it gives parents something to actually look at that can tell them, hey, something is up. Maybe video game addiction, maybe something else, but something is up. So let's start about some of the warning signs you would advocate parents to look for if they think their teen might be a video game addict.
So the first is this a preoccupation? Is this child spending so many hours that it's taking away from the energy that they should be putting into their schoolwork, to their friendships, to their sports, things that they used to really enjoy and become actively engaged in? Are they lying about their use? Are they hiding it from you, right? Telling you that they're in the room doing their schoolwork when they're playing video games. Or they look really tired the next morning and they said they just couldn't sleep, but they were really playing all night. Are they replacing the games for something that they feel like they're missing in life? Are they feeling depressed or anxious or left out, and they're gaming as a way to avoid conflict and a way to avoid dealing with this stress? These are all telltale signs. And we talked about the functional impairment, right? Are they not doing well in school? Are they not participating in activities because they're gaming instead? And it's causing a serious impairment where teachers are calling in saying that their grades are slipping, or their coaches are saying that they're not showing up for practice or not doing as well in practice because of the gaming. Also, you want to see if they're requiring more and more gaming to get the same high, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is really tough for parents to notice, especially if someone's lying about it and hiding this behavior.
Right.
So if your child initially started playing 1-2 hours and now they're spending the whole weekend doing that, then that's a warning sign that they're needing more and more dosages of this hit, so to speak, to get the same high.
But what about the person who says they're not trying to get the same high? They just right now are really into this game, and next month they're going to be into something different.
That's how they start. That's how gaming addiction begins. It's just a hobby. They just want to get to the next level. But when they're not doing the things that they used to do, that they used to enjoy, because they're playing video games, and that's a problem. They're replacing other important areas of their life with something that is not necessarily healthy.
Now, there'll be parents out there who say, I just don't think my kid should be playing 6 hours a day, and he still goes to baseball practice, and he still gets good grades, and he has great friends, but I just think he plays video games too much. What would you tell those parents?
Well, is this person having a change in their personality because of the video games? Are they not sleeping? Right? There are a lot of high-functioning kids out there who can, so to speak, do it all, but after how long can you do it all? You know?
Would you call them, because to me, if we were talking about alcohol abuse, they would be called functioning alcoholics.
Exactly.
So these would be functioning video game addicts. Now, if there's no impairment in their life, though, they technically don't have that addiction label.
Correct, but I find that that's very rare, especially when you're playing so many hours.
Yeah.
There's got to be some impairment. Maybe the parents aren't fully acknowledging it. So that's when you turn to the parents. Are you communicating as much? Is your relationship as rich as it used to be?
Right.
And you'll find most times parents are like, no, but that's typical teenage behavior. I don't know.
Right, I get that. So for the parent who is thinking, well, they still have good grades and he still talks to his best friend a lot, so I don't have to worry. You might not be digging far enough. Or you might not be getting the whole picture, because that is a good point. How do you play video games 6 hours a day and maintain everything and not have some sort of aversive response to that? Or how long can you even do that?
That's right. And the parents that I meet with kids who have full-blown addiction will say, years ago, he could play 6 or 7 hours a day and still do X, Y, and Z. And now he's just doing this all day.
Wow.
So at that point in time, something could have been done to stop this from becoming a full-blown addiction.
I know it's hard for you to answer this because you've never been a video game addict, correct? Let me rephrase the question. Have you ever been addicted to video games?
I think that maybe when I was like 12 or 13, we got a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And now that I look back, I probably was gaming a bit too much. I was always this high achiever, this competitive person. And it was Super Nintendo. Mario Brothers, and I wanted to rescue the princess.
Yeah.
And I was the first and the only in my family of 4 to rescue the princess for a whole summer.
Okay.
And I wanted to hold on to that. I wanted that title to remain.
Yeah.
Thank goodness my parents shipped us off to camp at the end of every summer, because I probably would have continued gaming.
Right. Now, okay, so I have some questions about this. You say you probably video game too much.
Too much, yeah.
Okay, but not an addiction.
No.
Okay. When you went to summer camp, do you remember feeling withdrawal symptoms?
I didn't.
Okay.
And so I don't think it classified at the what I experienced classified at the time as gaming addiction, but I was probably overusing video games and gaming way too much.
Yes.
And eventually, had that gone on, maybe I could have developed an addiction. Who knows? Do you really want to risk that with your kids?
Absolutely. When's the last time you've played Super Mario Brothers?
Oh, it's been years.
I was so hoping you're like, oh, last night, me and my husband till 3 a.m. I'm going, maybe need to watch this series. Okay. So then maybe let me ask you this. What does it feel like when you are gaming? Like what are the response, like how does that feel?
Well, at the time, it felt pretty awesome, right? I was the only one who could get to that level. And there's this sense of achievement that you get, this praise, right? And you know what? I went off to camp, hung out with my friends, and I had real life friendships, right? You can't replace that with a console. And by the time I came back home, I had forgotten about that. But there are some kids that don't have that ability to make friendships. They're shy. They feel like no one likes them. They're anxious. They're socially anxious. And they see video games as a way for them to actually be a part of a friend group for the first time in their lives. And that's part of that immersive, addictive experience, is that you finally have a sense of community, friendship that you didn't have in real life.
You know, back in the day, I think probably in the 80s when Dungeons and Dragons was sweeping the nation, that was kind of a form of this. There was this community. It was a community mostly known for, you know, the outliers or the people who just didn't fit in anywhere. And they had this community surrounded by a game that is the reason they got together and is the reason, and it gave them an outlet to socialize. But do you think because that game was in person and required human face-to-face interaction, it didn't have the negative consequences that we're seeing with digital gaming?
So in part, yes. There's a different quality to addiction when it's easily accessible versus when it's not. So you can't always play Dungeons and Dragons, right? You can't always be at a Star Trek convention, you know? The way that video games are built these days is that they're so readily accessible wherever you are. And so if you're addicted to something and if you're overusing something and you have easy access, it's a dangerous combination. So there's a different quality to games in the video. There's a different quality to video games compared to games that are not digital.
Yeah, that's a good way to distinguish that. Let's go back to you. When you were having that summer playing Super Mario Brothers, did you ever feel, or do you remember feeling that this was a problem?
Not at all.
No.
I thought it was awesome.
So you were just in it. Are there any patients that you've worked with or people that you've talked to who are self-aware that their gaming is a problem?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially when someone's been gaming throughout high school and barely making it, and then they go to college. And the amount of work that you face in college is so different than high school. So if you're gaming for hours a day, there's no way you can pass your classes. So typically when people hit rock bottom and they start failing and it becomes very public, then they ask for help and they're aware. But the same teenager in high school who was getting by wasn't fully aware. They thought it was awesome too.
Right. So it's unlikely then that a parent of a high schooler or middle schooler is going to have their child come to them and say, Mom, I have this video game problem.
Correct.
In your experience, the children that you treat under the age of 18, are they happy to be there with you working on their video game addiction, or are they upset about it?
They don't think they have a problem.
They don't think they have a problem.
They think their parents are the problem because everyone's doing it.
Right. That's a valid argument, though.
But not everyone is doing it that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
so.
I get that. What is the sign or signs that a child needs to see a professional for their gaming?
So we talked about slipping grades, not talking to your family members, not being engaged with your friends, a little bit of irritability, being sleep deprived, and even depression. Because after a while, when you engage in a cycle of addiction, the actual act stops being pleasurable to you. You're just doing it because you don't want to have the withdrawal symptoms. You don't want to feel the discomfort of not doing it. And so these are all signs that you got to get help because it's unhealthy.
I remember seeing, I don't know if it was a meme or a Facebook post by somebody, but they said, in high school, I used to set my alarm at 3 a.m. so I could open that game where you own a farm. It was really popular. Farmville, and harvest their crops.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking, whoa, that is that's a choice, that I've never made. But they were looking back going, what was I thinking? Making that choice to set an alarm to go harvest fake crops on your phone. But this is what people are the situations that they're finding themselves in. And they don't see it as a problem until they've hit rock bottom.
Right.
Is there a possibility, though, that they're using gaming to escape something else in their life, abusive parents, or a bully at school, so they use gaming to do that? So even if you treat the gaming, you're still not treating the problem and therefore won't see the results that you want?
Possibly. And there's also the reality that games like Farmville are highly addictive just in their nature. So I've seen people who have problematic Farmville use, if you want to call that a thing, because the game itself just draws you in. There's something about the way that they make these video games that in its very nature is addictive. So the person may have no problems. They may not actually be stressed or anxious or depressed, but just by design, the game is addictive. And if the person has a genetic predisposition to addiction, then they can develop a potential overuse problem with video games.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as digital drug dealers, targeting our youth. And our youth and their parents are happy to buy because it's what people want. When it comes to warning signs, any last words?
Don't wait until it's too late. Stop the problem before it becomes a full-blown addiction.
Yes, and on that note, in our next episode, Dr. Judith Joseph is going to be giving you some parenting tips on what you can do to both prevent and help your child through video game addiction.